Imagine this. The annual report on cancer-related deaths has just been released. You hold your breath in anticipation of the terrible news. But wait, how many deaths in the last year? Instead of an incline in numbers, you see, for the very first time, a drastic decrease. And by drastic, we're talking thousands. Vitamin D, the sunshine vitamin, is taken for granted. Minimal attention is placed on its important role in child and adult health, and consequently, vitamin D deficiency is now recognized as a worldwide epidemic. Here's a shocking fact. Medical experts will tell you that 75% of Americans are lacking in vitamin D. Vitamin D deficiency is considered a silent epidemic, and for a very good reason. Most people aren't even aware it exists.
Recently, with all the popularity of learning about vitamin D and its importance, I'm checking more people for it, and I'm finding it quite frequently. I'd say probably 80% of the people I check have a vitamin D deficiency.
For more than 40 years, the government has broadcasted the unchallenged message that all humans should avoid direct sun exposure, to liberally apply sunscreen, and to wear protective clothing when outdoors. This sun safety message still penetrates the general public today, yet the main source of vitamin D for humans is sensible sun exposure. We have an imbalance. One, use sunscreen with sun protective factor SPF 15 or higher liberally and reapply every 2 hours or after working, swimming, playing, or exercising outdoors. 2. Wear clothing to protect exposed skin. 3. Wear a hat with a wide brim to shade the face, head, ears, and neck. 4. Wear sunglasses that wrap around and block as close to 100% of both UVA and UVB rays as possible. 5. Seek shade, especially during midday hours. Speaking in more familiar everyday language, these messages translate into slather on this sunscreen or you'll get cancer, and cover up, don't you know the sun can kill you? You hear these words over and over, and they've been handed down for decades now, from your grandmother all the way to the person reporting the nightly news. Americans are frightened of the sun.
People are so scared of getting skin cancer and such, so we all have 80 block on.
But wait, isn't the sun nature's greatest gift of life-giving power? Very recently, arguments against these current public health messages have begun to circulate. There is growing recognition that adequate sun exposure is essential for maintenance of vitamin D levels. The major cause of vitamin D deficiency is the lack of appreciation that sun exposure in moderation is the major source of vitamin D for humans. You, your family, friends, and coworkers may be at serious risk for a whole host of chronic and debilitating illnesses. Why? Because you're not getting enough vitamin D. And now you're thinking, but I drink milk and orange juice fortified with extra vitamin D. What you're not being told is that food sources and supplements are not the best forms of vitamin D for your body. If adults and adolescents regularly avoid sunlight exposure, research indicates a necessity to supplement with at least 5,000 international units of vitamin D daily. To obtain this amount from milk, you would need to consume 50 glasses. With a multivitamin, more than 10 tablets would be necessary. Neither is realistic or advisable. Yet, your body makes the sunshine vitamin naturally when exposed to sunlight. In targeting over 2,000 genes in the human body, vitamin D plays a vital role in preventing at least 17 varieties of cancer, heart disease, stroke, hypertension, autoimmune diseases, diabetes, depression, chronic pain, and osteoporosis.
Vitamin D is a mineral that's necessary in our bodies in order to have the production of calcium, which is important for bone growth. And lately, more research has been showing that the importance of vitamin D is also necessary for other organ systems, not just your bones, but also your heart, and as a preventative measure for certain cancers.
Health investigators and doctors have observed that where there's less sun, there's more cancer, flu, and even autism. For example, increased rates of these diseases exist during the winter months when there's less sunlight. More of these diseases also exist the further you travel from the equator. Scientific research reveals an obvious connection between vitamin D deficiency and these chronic, debilitating diseases. Remember, our ancestors lived naked under the sun for several million years. Then, 50,000 years ago, some of us migrated north and south to places with less sun. Then we put on clothes, started working inside, and living in cities where buildings blocked the sun. Then we started traveling in cars instead of walking, or riding horses, and glass blocked even more of the UVB in the sunlight. Then, only a few years ago, we started actively avoiding the sun and putting on sunblock. All this time, we have steadily been reducing the levels of vitamin D in our bodies. The most significant reductions in sunlight exposure occurred after the Industrial Revolution, when cardiovascular disease, diabetes, and cancer rates seemed to greatly increase in number. Pretty terrifying when you think about it. So here's my solution. For a person with moderately fair skin, exposure of hands, face, and arms for 10 minutes during the midday hours is sufficient to maintain vitamin D concentrations in the normal range. There is absolutely no reason why anyone in the world should suffer from a lack of vitamin D when the simple solution is natural and free and incorporates spending just a little time outdoors. I'm not saying you shouldn't be careful. Keep your time in the sun moderate. The sun is a very powerful source, and repeated overexposure can cause harmful and dangerous damage to your skin.
You don't want to have a burn because it can be a 2nd or 3rd degree burn from sun, but you have to find that middle line. Depending on your skin tone, if you're fair, I wouldn't send someone just directly out in the midday sun of like 11 to 2 because they're the brightest, most harmful rays. But depending on the skin tone, there's nothing wrong with going out in the sun for a few minutes if you're extremely fair skin, but it doesn't take much to help the conversion of your body to make a good source of vitamin D that gets utilized, and that probably would be 10 to 20 minutes in the sun at max during those peak hours.
Your body is a system that naturally makes thousands of units of vitamin D in minutes from sun exposure. We have a government, on the other hand, saying to avoid the sun at all costs. This entire problem, when you think about it, is completely absurd. Yet the government has refused to look at the evidence for over 10 years. Stop living in the dark and speak out against the myth of the deadly sun. The longer you wait, the longer we may be at risk for serious health conditions that can easily be prevented. Together, we can create a greater awareness of the dangerous consequences of vitamin D deficiency by promoting safe sun exposure.